There was a time when the Assassin's Creed games really generated a lot of hype and interest when a game was released, in particular amongst fans of the series and gamers in general. But as Ubisoft decided to annualize the franchise, a lot of that hype and interest was lost, as year after year a new game was churned out, and quite frankly a lot of the hype and interest was gone, and I think a lot of franchise fatigue hit gamers, including myself. I no longer cared basically when an Assassin's Creed game came out. So when Ubisoft decided that they were going to take an extra year off in order to spend extra time and effort on Assassin's Creed Origins, I must admit I was cautiously optimistic. And thankfully that extra time and effort has clearly paid off. Assassin's Creed Origins is the best game in the entire franchise. It is that good. The first thing that Ubisoft have done right is the amazing time period that they have selected for this game. Ancient Egypt for me is one of the most interesting and intriguing time periods in human history. And what Ubisoft have clearly spent a lot of time and effort on is how beautifully they recreated this world. The game looks stunning, from the sunlight effects hitting the water, the pyramids, the towns, the cities, the animals. This is the most beautiful Assassin's Creed game ever made. To be honest, that's quite expected, isn't it? The most recent game in a game series should be the most beautiful game in that game series' history. Graphics are, after all, continuously improving. But what Ubisoft have done really well here is put a lot of effort into the minute details of the world, in particular highlighting the cultural differences between the Greek and Egyptian people, how the Greek treat the Egyptian people as second-class citizens, how much detail they put into the sort of religious beliefs of the people, their gods, how strongly they influence their everyday life. But above all, they put a lot of time and effort into highlighting the non-playable characters, the actual characters of the world that feel real, that look like they actually have a purpose. The gods, for example, will actually be socializing with each other sometimes. They'll be sitting down to eat, they will go to sleep, they will even be peeing sometimes. I've even seen my horse actually take a dump. Seriously, that's how much detail they've put into this world. That's why, above all other Assassin's Creed games before, this world feels real, whereas in previous games it felt like it was just a big playground for your main character to sort of go explore killing people. The incredible level of detail makes it even more astounding that this is by far and away the biggest world map in Assassin's Creed's history. The map is huge. After about 30 hours of gameplay, I still hadn't covered the entire region yet. There was still probably 30-40% left. And what makes it even more impressive is how incredibly dense it is. We're not talking about big open emptiness between towns and cities. It is incredibly dense. There is so much to do in this game. It is definitely worth, I think, dozens and dozens of hours of gameplay, at least 40 or 50, if not more, if you really want to cover everything. It is an incredible game. Ubisoft have done an amazing job here. There have been a lot of fundamental changes made with Assassin's Creed Origins, but I think the biggest change is the fact that this is now a true RPG game. There is a leveling system for your character. There's a much more advanced skill tree system as well, which you can branch out to 3 different areas and fundamentally change the way that you play the game for your style. It's the same with the armor and the weapons, as you can select the armors and weapons with abilities and side effects that more favour your style of playing. I love these things. I love them. They're basically true characteristics of an RPG game, and I am a true RPG fan. But saying that, not everyone will enjoy RPG games, so these sort of changes might be quite a learning curve for those who are truly new to RPG games, and especially those who have only played previous Assassin's Creed games. In particular, I think the grinding aspect will be controversial to some gaming fans, in particular previous Assassin's Creed fans, because you will sometimes have armor and levels that are actually higher level than you, and means you actually have to get to that level first before you can even equip it. You will have enemies that are much higher level than you, and trust me, in this game that actually matters, because they'll be very powerful, which will again mean you have to complete other side missions or other main missions and gain more XP in order to increase your level to equip those armors, defeat those enemies. I again personally enjoy this aspect, but not everyone will. I think the second biggest aspect of Assassin's Creed Origins, which has been completely rebuilt, is the combat system. it has been completely redesigned from the ground up, so that rather than now having long sequences and combinations like in previous games, is now more tactical and one-on-one type combat approaches. So you now try and parry and block opponents' attacks and launch counterattacks. And what I really enjoyed is the fact that there's now different classes and weapon sets for your fighter, depending on your choice and how you want to go about combat. So you can have, for example, dual swords, which are much faster, much quicker in terms of combos, but they have short reaches, so a weakness there. You can also go for big, powerful weapons like an axe, which are very strong, very lethal, but they're much slower in terms of their attack, so there's a weakness there. You can also, of course, go for a sword and a shield combination, which is probably the most balanced attack, so not particularly great at everything, but not also poor in anything as well. I really enjoy this about Assassin's Creed Origins because you could tailor the combat to your style of play, what you enjoy. You can also change it depending on the enemy you encountered, because that's another big difference as well. The enemies in this game will be a lot different depending on who you are up against. You can face big, powerful enemies with big shields, which will require you to move around a lot more and actually try and expose them and flank them from the back. You can face opponents who are much quicker, in which case you want to launch a much more powerful attack up front as they have less defense. I thoroughly enjoy the combat in Assassin's Creed Origins and think it's much superior than any previous installment of the game. However, saying that, there is a weakness, and that is when you're fighting groups of opponents, the auto-locking system where you try and focus your attention to one particular enemy is not very accurate. Like, quite often I found myself auto-locking against the opponent who's much more further away rather than the one who's putting me in immediate danger. This caused problems quite a few times, to be honest. It's the one weakness of the combat system which I think has definitely been overall improved. But it is unfortunate about this aspect that the auto-locking is a bit unpredictable, to be honest. But overall, I still think the combat system is much better than in previous games. A really simple addition to the game is your Ego Sanu, but it's something that's very important and actually something I really enjoyed, because you can use your Ego Sanu to actually scout ahead. So you can use Sanu to actually locate treasures, to pinpoint targets, and best of all, I think you can actually use Sanu to strategize when you're going to launch an attack against a bandit camp, for example. You can use Sanu to mark the actual enemies, where they're located, how they're going to move around, and you can use that to actually strategize and come up with a plan in order how you're going to attack this bandit camp. And what I really enjoyed above all else, I think, in Assassin's Creed Origins is when you really execute this plan to perfection, when you actually take over and eliminate all the bandits, for example, in a camp without ever being detected. Nothing quite like the feeling of when a plan really comes together. However, saying that, what really unfortunately helps you to get these plans together is the fact that the AI of the enemies is still quite poor. I think this has been a fundamental issue in the entire series, to be honest, where you can still travel around a bandit camp relatively easily without being detected. In particular, what's really poor about the AI is how you can just whistle over and grab their attention without alerting anyone else. So even if you got 2 or 3 bandits, for example, right next to each other, or soldiers, if you whistle, one of them will come over, the other 2 will be completely oblivious. You could then assassinate one of them, basically right in front of them, but because you're in long grass, for whatever reason, that makes the other 2 completely oblivious and blind. You could then repeat the process. You could then whistle over the second person, assassinate him in the long grass, then whistle over the third person, assassinate them as well, and just like that, repeating the exact same process, you can eliminate most enemies. This is still a bit disappointing. I think the whistling mechanic itself is fine, but I think they need to improve the reaction of the other actual enemies. They should be able to hear the whistling as well, for example. If there's a few of them bunched together, they should be able to see you if you assassinate someone right in front of them. It doesn't matter if you're in long grass. If your friend, your fellow bandit suddenly drops and disappears, you should be able to notice. But unfortunately in this game, this is still not the case. And I think that's still a fundamental weakness of this entire series, the poor AI. Now, I've spoken a lot about the actual gameplay mechanics themselves, but another great improvement of Assassin's Creed Origins, especially over the last few years, is the much better main characters as well. I really enjoyed playing as Bayek of Siva, and actually his wife Aya as well, because they felt like real genuine characters. They both had a real loving relationship that I really believed in, that I really actually felt, yep, that's real, they're believable, the way they behaved, and I think they were one of the more interesting main characters in this entire series. Probably since Ezio. Since Ezio, I think these two characters, Bayek and Aya, have been the best main characters. In particular because of their realistic behavior, the way they came about, and also their purpose. Which leads me to the storyline itself. The storyline of Assassin's Creed Origins is much better than any of the more recent games, and the main reason for that, I think, is the fact that it's a lot more stripped down to basics. Gone are the overall themes of the big, assassins versus Templar organizations, where you just felt like a little bit of a pawn in a big, massive global conflict. Instead, in this story, it's a revenge tale where it's more personal to Bayek, more personal to Aya. I'm not going to go into spoiler details, of course, but it's essentially a revenge story for them. And because of that, I grew to care a lot more. Certainly a lot more than when it's assassins versus Templars, this long battle that's gone through time. There's a lot less of the supernatural stuff as well. Of course there is aspects of that, and it is touched on a little bit, but because I think this is the origins of assassins and Templars and these great organizations, the story is more stripped down as a result, and a lot more on a micro personal level, which for me, I enjoyed a lot more. However, saying that, where I think it maybe had a bit of trouble in terms of storyline is the way it began. It does essentially throw you straight into the deep end, rather than telling the story in a way where you see the beginnings and why Bayek and Aya are on the mission that they're on and why they're seeking revenge. Instead, it immediately thrusts you with Bayek attempting to kill one of the main enemies, and instead doing that first, it then later on tries explaining why you were doing that and what the purpose of the game is. Now, I think I respect Ubisoft for trying something different there, but I think it can be a little overwhelming to certain gamers. I myself, when I played it as well, I was a little bit like, whoa, hold on, what's going on here? But I persisted with it, and I think it really improved over the initial couple of hours when you really got into it and understood what and why things were happening. But I think it can be a little overwhelming when you first start playing, because it really does throw you right into the deep end with little to no explanation as to why you're trying to kill these people. And I think another continual negative aspect of Assassin's Creed series, it for me anyway, is the modern day aspect of the story. I personally think that has just long overstayed its welcome. I think they personally have no idea where they're going with it. I think especially post Desmond's death, that the modern day story has just completely fallen apart. And I think it's pretty much the case here as well. I cared very little to none at all for Layla, the female character that you play in the main modern storyline, and quite frankly the fact that you very rarely delve into the modern day shows that they know it's not that popular an aspect. And personally, I would just think that it's worth just scrapping altogether. I would be happy just playing as Bayek of Siva in this game and not even having like an Anubis type device where you're traveling back and forth. I'd be perfectly happy just playing the life of Bayek of Siva rather than through Layla. I think that's something Ubisoft should consider for the future, because I personally think the modern day storyline just completely lost its purpose now. I'm not sure whether they have any plan as to how they're going to finish with that, in my opinion. I think it's now time to discuss the big M word in modern gaming, and that's microtransactions. Assassin's Creed Origins does indeed include microtransactions, but what I will say is, in fairness to Ubisoft, that they're not really necessary at all. You don't need to spend any money on these microtransactions to help you get through the game. I've played the game for a number of hours now, 30 odd hours, 40 even, and I haven't spent a single penny. Not once. And I've not needed to, I've not required to, and I don't think I've missed out by not doing it. So I actually think in this aspect that microtransactions are not that bad. And in fact, they actually might benefit some people who quite frankly don't have the time to play that level or amount of gaming. That's why it's even labelled some of the sections as time-saving ones. So you can, for example, buy maps leading to certain locations. You can in fact get boosts so that you can level up quickly. 3 levels I think it was. So I actually don't think the microtransactions in this game are that bad. I don't like microtransactions in general, but I think when it's done like this, where it's there to just benefit certain gamers who want to maybe accelerate the experience a little bit, is not too bad at all. My overall conclusions for Assassin's Creed Origins is that I honestly think it's the best Assassin's Creed game ever made. For a long time, my favourite was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and I didn't think it was ever going to be topped because the recent games were so poor and felt like there wasn't much effort going into it. But the extra year they took to develop and produce this game have clearly benefited. There are overall so many aspects of the game, in my opinion, for the better. The combat system, the RPG element, the amount of detail in the real world, and how they've recreated ancient Egypt is just amazing. And there are a few negative aspects, and I think that can be improved in the future. Auto-locking system and the poor AI. But overall, I give Assassin's Creed Origins a 9 out of 10, and I actually think it's a Game of the Year contender type game. Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe. Thank you very much.